all over the world, atrocities continue to be committed in the name of racism, bigotry, and intolerance. Imagine if young people could experience eyewitness accounts of such crimes against humanity. Would it change them? Could it change the world? The survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation knows it can.
I asked this couple, when are we going to be reunited with our parents? And she pointed to one of the chimneys of the crematoria, which I didn't even see until then. And it was then that I noticed these 4 brick chimneys bellowing fire and soot. And she said, "Do you see this chimney?" I said, "Yes." She says, "There go your parents. And when you'll go through the chimneys, you'll be reunited."
I hear my daughter, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." They promised we're going to be the family together, but it wasn't true. And that's when they took me away, and I never saw him back again.
It began in Poland. While filming Schindler's List, Steven Spielberg was inspired by numerous Holocaust survivors eager to share their stories.
An older woman who had been a very young girl, she had come to Krakow, first time she had returned to Europe since the Holocaust. And she kept telling me, "I have such a larger story of my life to tell you. I want to tell you about my parents. I want to tell you about my brothers and sisters. I have a life, an extraordinary life after my survival." And that's how the Shoah Foundation began. It began with my wanting to continue Schindler's List and make the list from 1,100 to 52,000. I've envisioned the Shoah Foundation in a 3-act structure. The first act was a race against time to rescue the testimonies before it was too late.
Between 1994 and 1999, the Foundation's team of staff and volunteers collected over 52,000 survivor and witness testimonies from 56 countries in 32 different languages.
I tady flatnost, jsme museli za rádia, stříbro a já něco všechno.
En este momento no pensé que no tenía nada de la familia, no tenía nadie. Ott maradtam. Az volt az utolsó, hogy az anyámat láttam.
The survivors included Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Sinti and Roma, political prisoners, and homosexuals. Among the witnesses were rescuers, liberators, and war crimes trials participants.
We had just recently been assigned to Patton's Third Army. We ended up just outside the Buchenwald concentration camp. We weren't aware of what it was until we actually walked in the gates. And the first thing we saw was bodies. Just cartloads of bodies. I'm sorry.
Battled, hardened soldiers, men that probably were in the Battle of the Bulge or wherever they were fighting. They stand, they look at us and cry, and we stand there, cry with them and sing Yankee Doodle Dandy. That scene is something which I'll never forget. I mean, it is like saying, "What took you so long? Where were you?"
The second act is the indexing and cataloging of all 52,000 testimonies.
Now that the Foundation had collected the world's largest visual history archive, a greater opportunity presented itself.
Imagine having 120,000 hours of video and wanting to find a particular experience in which you were especially interested. At the very beginning of the Shoah Foundation, one of the problems that had to be addressed was this problem. And the way it has been addressed has been through an extraordinary digital indexing technology that associates keywords with particular time codes in the videos and allows searching to take place as though the videos were text.
By doing so, they made the richness and detail of each story accessible to people around the world.
The third act is turning the survivors into educators.
The challenge then presented itself to transform these deeply personal testimonies into practical tools of education.
I feel it's my obligation to inform and educate those kids and tell them that actually the Holocaust did happen. And maybe by education, we can prevent another Holocaust.
What testimony can teach children is that they have a responsibility for making the world a more tolerant place.
And so the Foundation embarked upon a new mission to overcome prejudice, intolerance, and bigotry, and the suffering they cause through the educational use of the Foundation's visual history testimonies.
They took two men at random, shot them, and just let them lie there. And we happened to live in a corner, so they came to our house.
When you hear just a single story of one person watching their own grandmother be killed, it makes it feel so much more powerful, even though that's just one example. And you could come up with 6 million examples of that.
It almost becomes an adoption. An adoption happens, and a child adopts a grown-up.
The Foundation incorporates testimonies into classroom lessons, not merely to teach about the Holocaust, but to inspire dialogue and create an understanding of how intolerance and hatred have led to similar atrocities throughout history.
It reminded me of what my dad always tells me, which is his testimony of what happened in Cambodia, the genocide.
The Armenian genocide is not explained as much, and it's not shared, and people don't really acknowledge it.
The numbers boggle the mind for these other genocides, just as they boggle the mind for the Holocaust. Just to choose one example of many, in Rwanda, 1 million people were murdered in the space of 3 months in 1994. That's a pace unrivaled by any other genocide except the Holocaust in 1942 and 1943. And it is that evil that the Shoah Foundation hopes to combat.
Seeing the faces and hearing the voices of survivors helps students make the connection between history and the moral choices they confront in their own lives.
If we look at hatred and prejudice and we really truly are honest and examine what's important to us, it helps us to be more informed about the choices we make.
I've stand up for a lot of people already, but this makes me, it makes me more motivated.
Young people who watch the testimonies are not people who are completely without experience with intolerance.
I identified many beliefs that I have that are prejudicial, and I think it made me think twice about the things that I do, or even the jokes that I laugh at.
They make a close connection to the experience of survivors of the Holocaust.
It makes you realize the evil other people can do to each other, and it makes me want to never have to have anyone go through that and to be able to prevent it.
Those testimonies have an extraordinary educational value because they're a warning to all of us that we have a responsibility to those around us.
The Shoah Foundation has also produced a number of films based on testimonies from its archive. The films have garnered numerous awards, and they have been translated into 17 languages.
Czasami w zupełnie nieoczekiwanych sytuacjach, już w Ameryce na przykład, kiedy mnie ktoś zapyta, czy ja jestem Żydem, ja potrafię powiedzieć nie.
The testimonies also serve as a basis for interactive educational materials and videos, including a German-language CD-ROM, which is being used by 1 million students in classrooms throughout Germany. These life stories are part of the cultural history of the cities and countries where they were collected. To return the testimonies to their communities, the Foundation forms partnerships with organizations that share its educational goals. Testimonies can now be seen in hundreds of libraries, museums, universities, and memorial sites worldwide.
The Holocaust should be a lesson not only to Jews, but to mankind, to what hatred can lead.
The survivors of the Shoah have given us all a powerful message for the future. Now it's up to you to help deliver that message.
The day will come when all the survivors will be gone, but those 52,000 testimonies will still be there, and someone needs to take responsibility now for ensuring their preservation and ensuring their use for educational purposes. The way to take responsibility for the future is by making contributions to the Shoah Foundation now.
Overcoming racism and violence is our collective responsibility. The Shoah Foundation needs your help to assure that the thousands of stories we have recorded will be seen and heard for generations to come.
I know I have an obligation to see to it that the history of those tragic dark days will be recorded forever and carried from generation to generation.
It's not an issue of forgetting or forgiving. It's an issue of learning.
I would say you have to be involved, because if not, God forbid, the same thing can happen again.
One person has influence over so many other people. People think that, oh, one person can't really make a difference, but they can. They really can, because they can touch other people.